think kind of the integrity score, getting people to turn up, like all these things. Some people I always believed over time, these are really ruthless. Oh, you're being so mean, you're being so tough. It's like, but no, like I think you get to a certain realization point, like an inflection point, where you realize actually we're without rigor, without understanding what performance means, without knowing how it's supposed to show up, without, if we can harness everyone doing that, we'll have a successful business. And that's what we're here to do, is surely to have a successful business. And actually these little things make a huge difference. I think people maybe feel uncomfortable because they feel they're a little bit mean rather than just being like a little bit rigorous.
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual excellence.
Well, here we are at the Product Agility Podcast, and this episode isn't me on my own. No, I am joined by a guest, and it feels like a long time since we had a guest, and particularly a guest of this caliber. Adam Josephs, who'll be joining us today, was introduced to me by a friend of the show, David Pereira, actually. And since then, I've kind of got to know Adam a little bit through his book, Risk Up Front, and then Facebook on YouTube. You'll see me hold in front of my face there. And through a couple of conversations that we've had, and it's been a joy getting to know him. It's been a joy kind of skimming through this book as well. And today, we're going to be looking at, really, I suppose the basis is going to be Adam and his co-author, Brad Rubenstein's book, Risk Up Front, and kind of picking up some of the key themes. So Adam is a coach and a consultant, and I'm just looking down at my notes here because the most important thing for me to know about Adam is that he's growing corn in Times Square, which is not something that many people have done. I'm guessing it's not a common practice in Times Square.
I hope not, because I'll lose my lock on the market, right? You know, you go to certain high-end restaurants, they're selling you, would you like, well, you know, along with the truffle menu, you can get the New York corn menu, right? Would you like 3 kernels for $150, or would you like 5 for $200?
Yeah, do you pay by the kernel or pay by the gram? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, given how much I'm able to grow, we're kind of doing by the kernel, so we're going to see.
And also, Adam's got a huge amount of experience and a ton of fantastic stories, which I think everyone's going to really enjoy listening to today. And we're going to be initiating our conversation in a moment around projects, which may seem like an odd choice of topic, given the title of the podcast. And for those of you that know me and know the topics that we cover on this podcast quite well, not something that we've really addressed in earnest for quite some time. So I'm looking forward to digging into this, and hopefully, I believe there'll be a few surprises for you along the way. But Adam, as is true to form, I'd love it if you could give a little bit of an introduction to yourself to our listeners.
I'm born and raised in New York, went out to California, went to Stanford, then worked in Silicon Valley for Apple and Microsoft, flung by Seattle with Microsoft for a little bit, came back to New York, did a few startups back in Web 1.0, you know, where we all had to engineer our shopping carts from scratch.
When the days when JavaScript was bad, like you don't touch JavaScript because it would infect.
Oh, please, you know, it's like, you know, half of it was in Perl scripts and such, you know, and of course, all on stone tablets. So, and such. And then Celerity Consulting was founded in 2000. And basically what we do is we work with technology companies on execution. So we're not the strategy folks like most consultants or whatever, which has allowed us to work in a whole range of industries. You know, I probably spend about a third of my time in computer, hardware, software stuff, a third in high tech. This would be semiconductor, chemical, biotech, all that fun stuff. And then the last third would be random other things. Goldman Sachs is a longtime client of ours. One of our fintech execs got elected to Congress and asked us to come down and work with his team, not our target customer. But it was amazing because at the core of our work is how do you build high performance teams in crazy environments, you know, environments of high levels of complexity and risk, both of which are reserved words for us in our work. We're very serious about how language is used and such. And other than that, I'm back in New York. I am raising vegetables and playing with my 3D printer. And I'm a recent theater critic.
Oh, yes. And
So
this.
if this consulting thing doesn't work out, I will keep going to Broadway shows and offering opinions in print.
Are these opinions, are they available online or is it just in physical media?
They are. They are. You can go. I am now the editor at large for culture, cuisine, and curtain calls at outinstl.com, which is sort of the LGBTQ plus paper of record in the mid Mississippi region. And such. And my friend is the publisher and asked if I would do this. Obviously, I'm in New York, not St. Louis, but as he put in my bio, he put something like, for those of you who still think it's worth getting out of town now and then. Fun. It's a lot.
Well, that's what my afternoon will now be filled with. We'll be checking out some of your reviews.
Oh, I should give a little, for my UK crowd, right? So I went to Stanford. My graduate work's at Oxford. So I am a failed Oxford doctoral student and such.
Well,
But
congratulations.
thank you. Actually, the austerity pricing came in like 2010. And I said, this is I can no longer afford this hobby. So that was, but I love playing in academia and such. And, our stuff is, is heavily impacted and occasionally influences those conversations on the first principles of why this stuff works, which is like something like Agile. It's all about complex adaptive systems, complex adaptive teams. And our work very much comes from that same place. And so this is why we're fans of lots of industry and problem type methodologies. Our stuff, as one of our clients says, is kind of the Sriracha sauce that you spray on top so it actually works.
Yeah, what food doesn't work after putting Sriracha on top is the...
There it is,
So for many people listening, you may be wondering why we're this is thinking about projects, because the tagline for your book, Risk Upfront, is managing projects in a complex world. And I think for many people, even those in the product world or agile world, I think projects maybe at times have had a bit of a bad rap and people have tried to steer away from them. So why are you talking about projects, Adam, and not something else like products?
Well, with all these terms, it all comes down to how you define it, right? Otherwise, they just become, everyone gets to either ascribe everything good in their life to it or everything bad in their life to it. So for us, a project is very simply something with a beginning, an end, and a measurable goal. So you know whether you're done or not. Sprints are projects, right? They have a beginning, an end, and a measurable goal. Now, the goal may be accurate measures of velocity. It may be a clear understanding of meeting objectives on workable, shippable, deployable code. Even if, the goal isn't explicitly, we get everything that we worked on done. A lot of engineering managers wish it was, but technically you're managing for a velocity curve, not for, this set of things. And when we work with larger organizations, anything can be a project. And then the key point is projectization is a choice. So getting your child to school on time is a project by definition, right? Getting up in bed and getting on a podcast, making dinner is a project. So it simply defines something that you've decided is worth referring to as something as a beginning and a measurable goal. And in the world of complex and risky execution, projectization is a choice that often when we work with technology companies, if you're doing continuous improvement on a software chain and you're working through the backlog and you've got well-honed a team that is worth using together, you putting in structures that are specific to projectization may not have a big win. But when you're doing something novel and complex, either organizationally, market, or technically, then and involves more than 4 people, then having some concept of projectization can make a difference because it feeds into our core theory of the case, which is what screws projects up are late changes. And late changes come from surprises. And so there is value in how you construct a project within the time frame of a project such that those issues and risks get identified early where it's cheap to deal with, right? Because we're on a curve
Just wondering.
that go cost of making a change, right? Much more expensive to fix something at the end than at the beginning, right? So one of the key opportunities for both speed and certainty is to force those changes, as many as you can, upfront where it's much less expensive to deal.
Okay. How are you defining complexity?
So complexity, so be careful, remember failed academic here. So there's 2 things. So let's start with sort of in the realm of academia, which is complexity is that you have a system that feeds back on itself such that it is difficult, if not impossible, to create a linear map to the end. And this is the things that led towards something like Agile, that what you're doing in a complex system is you are setting in a set of practices within one's control that shifts the zeitgeist as well as the output and the results towards the direction you want to go. In complexity theory, these are known as attractors.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to do good things with the expectation that you will get emergent results in the direction that you want to go. It would be great to aggressively manhandle, or however you want to put it, something to drag it up that linear curve. And if that worked, that might be great, but fewer and fewer things in our society work that way. So bottom line is, what are good things that you want to do with integrity, which is do what you say, that move you along here? And the structure of Agile and Scrum are rooted in that, right? We do these rituals and we measure these things and we don't measure other things. And the expectation is the emergent behavior, and the shift gets us to where we're going faster than if we did it a more, linear way, deterministic.
So complex environments are emergent, right? Complex systems are emergent, meaning that we, unless we have adequate expertise and time, neither of which are an infinite supply, we will never be able to predict what will happen, but we will be able to understand what's happened after it's happened. So
I would agree with that.
In a complex environment, if we cannot predict what will happen, how do we go about avoiding those surprises? And because you mentioned avoiding late changes, and you mentioned about avoiding surprises. If it is inherently, by definition, unpredictable and not possible to predict, given the constraints we're operating within, how does one go about then avoiding those surprises?
What a wonderful question. Thank you. I want to make sure what I said before made some sense.
It did.
Didn't confuse anyone. Yeah, but this is the punchline. Now, of course, it's all illusion of control. I have enough of a statistics background to be very clear. There's no such thing as causality, only correlation, such like that, which my mother could never understand. And she was clear. She had a system with penny slots in Las Vegas.
God, yeah. I mean, haven't we all at some point had that sort of
stuff? Yeah. When you me a believer. All right. So you're saying in a complex, unpredictable, chaotic world, how can you uncover things that are surprises, right? The classic Don Rumsfeld, I'm aging myself, but if any of you, the architect of the first Iran war,
Hooray.
And, there are unknown unknowns. What could we have done? To which I my hand is up in the back. Let me tell you what it falls with this whole concept of how do you optimize in complex environments. And we have a very specific story of that. So First, let's get back to we'll leverage this unknown unknowns, or as we like to say, don't know, you don't know, right? There's the stuff you know, and you know it, right? So, Ben, you know how to speak English, you know how to change the volume on your podcast thing. And we could be here a long time listing everything, right?
You would hope, I would hope that, but in real terms, probably not.
Well, this is the illusion of certainty, even if you know and think you know, right? It's like the cruel entropic universe. That's what we're up against. So you ask, what's a complex environment? We're in it, right? Tomorrow is promised to know. Okay, so I'll start quoting Shakespeare, and then we're in big trouble.
Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving, Alan. Go on.
We're moving. Right. So, the things you don't know, do you know Russian? Do you know Russian?
Morocco.
Okay. Anything else?
Um,
Oh, you may know Russian.
Well, I don't know Russian. I did spend a couple of weeks in Russia a number of years ago.
Okay.
And learned absolutely fuck all Russian because I have an interpreter.
Yeah. The Slavic languages, stuff. Bottom line is, these are things you don't, right? You don't know how to drive a helicopter, fly a helicopter. All we could do this. There's stuff and you know it. There's the stuff you don't know, and you don't know it. The stuff in the rest of the circles, the things you don't know. Okay. So how do you identify that? Which is the core of your question, right? So you can't just ask, okay, what's something you don't know? You won't get it. So you get into a complex game that is meant to have these things emerge. And what this looks like, and this is where it's wonderful, it gets weird, because there are, on any given team, there's two types of don't know, you don't know. There's one that the universe hasn't delivered or insight. Then there's the one that you just haven't heard. Someone's thinking it, but it remains invisible to the team. So how do you schedule a meeting to uncover those things? What would you put on the agenda? We're going to talk about risks. Well, those are risks by definition that we're already worried about. We don't know. Okay. So you have to do things that are complex and adaptive. So one of the things is, foundationally, we have 4 principles in risk up front: accountability, singular ownership of a result. The second thing is transparency. Everyone on the project has the same understanding of the facts. The third is integrity. We do what we say. And commitment is, it will be so even in the face of circumstances, as opposed to, I'll do my best, I'll try really hard. All right. So you need to come with that perspective. And one of the things you can do is, all right, let's write down what our measure of success is in front of the entire cross-functional team, or draft it and then review it line by line. People say, well, what line? That's ridiculous. This is incredibly inefficient. That's the whole point. Discovery is by definition inefficient. In the same way, daily stand-ups can be short, but they're inefficient. Everyone says what they're working on, even if they don't think that's necessary. And on the larger community, if you say, this is what we think we're committed to, well, let's do this. Let's write this down. Okay. We will deliver feature X. Okay. Who's accountable for it? Great. Okay. Are you clear what you're accountable for? It's like, really? Like, it will be so. And what happens is you start getting questions of like, well, is it X, or is it okay if we do Y, or if we do X, if we do 60 instead of 90? And then what happens is someone in the back of the room hears that and says, what are you talking about? I thought it was 30. Mm-hmm. What happens in that moment, that very simple thing, is something moved from what the team did not think was an issue, had no idea that was an issue, didn't know there was that disparity in understanding of the facts. All of a sudden that gets revealed, and it moves from an area of what we don't know into at least we don't know. Mm-hmm. And now we can schedule a meeting to fix it. So what happens here is 2 things. By forcing specificity in commitments and asking for upgraded conversations for commitment, like not, I'll try really hard, because then people go in, well, all right, I got it. I don't want to drag this out. We'll work it out as we go along. because human beings are optimistic procrastinators, right? The same thing that has us working on our problem sets at 4 a.m. and then swearing we'll do it differently next time. Just the human being. So forcing rigor in commitments, if we could patent one thing, it would be upgraded conversations for commitment and proactive risk identification. So that creates a dynamic. And, in telling this, it can land as poetry. It's like, oh, well, that's cute. But this is an engineering process. When teams do this, all of a sudden these issues start getting revealed. And then that begins to shift the zeitgeist of talking about things that it didn't think it needed to talk about. And when you do that stuff early, that's what it means to raise issues where it's less expensive to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and this back to daily stand-ups, one of our structures, risk appraisal, 4 principles, 4 pieces of paper, 2 meetings, right? One of the meetings once a week, the entire cross-functional team, everyone starting in one corner goes around and says the biggest reason they think the project will fail at that point from what they know. It's not. Does anyone have any risks? Are there any concerns? That's one of the least useful questions to solicit risks. Okay. So you got 20 people and they begin to say what their top risk is. But what makes this work is you engineer the language. We have an engineered language called cause, effect, impact. And that is one of the special ingredients in the Sriracha sauce. If I said to you, I'm afraid I'm going to get into a car accident, what would you say to me, Ben?
I would say that statistically, maybe just
Probably not. Good. So we'd have a nice waxing philosophical about, or you may ask questions and all that. But what if I said to you, the tires on my car are balding? The tread is running thin, or is very thin. And so I'm afraid I may get into a car accident. What would you say to me then?
So you're right to be afraid, Adam. I think it'd be rather foolhardy to go driving with bald tires.
So, and you might even immediately hit upon what the solution might, which initially could be get new tires, but then we can move on and say, just take a lift until you get new tires, or I will drive you, or I'm going to send my private jet, Ben, thank you, to take me from here to the home. Right. So the cause is an existing condition, the effect is a possible outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And our opinions about the future are rooted in our assessment of the present.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so critical to an effective articulation of risk. And this is like, we are deep in a language game here. And this is one of the reasons why our clients, it's like, this isn't an ordinary conversation, right? Because we all go around, oh God, I don't think the design's going to work. Someone says, yeah, me too. And what happens is, those two people think they're talking about the same thing, but really one person is worried because the architect is going on maternity leave next week. And so we're not going to get a good design. And the other one's thinking we're using last week's version of Oracle and that's going to screw up the design. And you'll never have that next conversation, or potentially you'll have when it's too late. And so the ritual of cause, effect, impact creates a whole different world of context of talking about risk. The other thing is, it's how you get through what's everyone's top risk with 20 people in the room in 10 minutes, right? This is what people are, when's the last time? People are shocked because you bring rigor to that. And the other advantage of this in this modern world is it cuts through low bandwidth, right? So the world of we're all on video conferences, this was way back before the pandemic and the transition and the whole bit. I work with multinational teams, and there it's so powerful because you cut through 2 things. One, you're on video conferences. If you're lucky, you offer a conference call.
Mm-hmm.
You get this articulated in this high density, expanded format, cause, effect, impact. Impact is simply why the CEO should care about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they care if I get into a car accident, right? I'm holding the key to the safe, or but not. The other thing is it cuts through culture. because it's weird for everyone. So it's so amazing to watch the China team, or the India team to communicate with each other or with the US or with the French team. Because it's weak. They all have to learn this technology. This is also very true you see that similar dynamic in Agile with the terms need to mean something. We know where Agile has failed so much is everyone just keeps using terms and they've lost what they actually mean. And like the people who engineered Scrum, it's like, no, it really has to look this way. You have to prove workability. You have to demo. It's like, and that's where we're all sick. Ben, before at some point, I have a secret world premiere of Ruffy.
Ruffy. Oh, so so when you first opened the book, what you're greeted with is rough.
Risk up front. Yeah. That's my late dog Clifford. So we lucked upon our cartoonist. But Ruffy is the risk up front friendly intelligence engine that is designed to coach you to do on your articulation of the risk. It's not a magic ball, but playing this language game is very difficult and takes practice. And then you get to practice with the AI engine, which I love to demo for you if you're interested.
Yeah, but I would love that. I mean, obviously, for those who are watching on YouTube, do you want to share your screen to do this? Or
I will share my screen.
Yeah, okay. So those of you, if you've not visited the podcast on YouTube, then please do go to YouTube.
We'll read it. It's extra fun when you read it.
Oh, we can read it. And Adam, I'm trying to convince people to go to the YouTube channel. You see, that was just a bit of a hook.
We'll not read it.
We'll not read it. No, we'll just read it in our own inner voices. No, we will read it out to you as well. So yeah, feel free to share your screen.
Okay. So my keys. Let me share screen. Am I sharing my entire screen?
There we go.
Cool. Is that real good?
Oh yeah, I can see that. So what I'm looking at here is a custom GPT style screen, I believe, it's called Rough Intelligence.
Right. So Ben, I want two things from you.
Okay.
I want you to give me a risk. So think of something in your life, and I just want you to articulate it as a risk. Matter of fact, I'm going to put on the mic here, and it's literally going to pick up your dictation. And then the other thing I want from you is your favorite comedian.
A risk in my life. The risk. Okay, hold on a sec. I'm trying to think of something which is maybe not overly revealing about my personal life. Okay. The risk is that if I don't update my company website, I miss out on potential new opportunities. Does that sound like a risk?
It sounds like something. Okay. Did
so yeah. I risk missing out on business if I don't do a good update.
Right. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now give me your favorite comedian.
My favorite comedian is a gentleman called Stuart Lee.
Good. Okay. A little too quiet. Say favorite comedian is, how do you spell Stuart?
Stewart Lee. L-E-E.
L-E. All right. I'm going to hit return. Let's see what it does.
Okay. A nice little introduction there. Do you mind if I read this out?
No, you may.
Okay, so it says, hi there, I'm Ruffy, your risk upfront friendly intelligent agent. I evaluate risk statements using the CEI framework, cause, effect, impact, and I assign a letter grade from A to D, identify what's structurally missing, and ask one sharp coaching question to move it forward. I don't rewrite risks, but I help you get clarity faster. Great, and so he's now responding in the style of Stuart Lee. Okay, so I've got a C+.
All right, so now read what's written here.
Okay, so it says... CEI breakdown. So the cause was in the present tense, which was a check. The effect, I miss out on potential new opportunities, which is future outcomes, sort of. And the impact was vague. Yeah, new opportunities is a placeholder, not a stake. So I got a C+. So this is an attempt at CEI, but doesn't cleanly diagram. The effect is too conceptual. New opportunities lacks a concrete milestone, timing, or dependency, and the impact is absent or at best implied. Structurally, you've gestured at a risk, but the logic chain collapses under scrutiny. That's a sexy sentence, isn't it? New opportunities are stand-in for specificity, which what actually breaks sales funnel, lead generation, etc. So the coaching question: what specific opportunity or type of lead are you worried about missing, and what business outcome, revenue, client acquisition, or reputation is that tied to? The punchline is that the risk is less actionable. A leader can't allocate resources, prioritize updates, or feel justified urgency off this version. It's more of a shrug than a sharp edge. Yeah, you're ready to take another swing. I like that. That's good feedback. How long have you spent developing this?
We've been working on it for, on and off around 6 months. What's behind it is a reference set. So this is an education because the world is very clear. You're either going to become, it's like what learning Excel in the 80s was. You have to become competent and not expert at it. And that's how you'll be part of the 50% that won't lose their jobs and such. But it's fun. I know I have like all these assistants, like all assistants, you have to check their work. It does the thing. What I don't like is there's not enough Stuart Lee in
No, there isn't. Well, I mean, Stuart Lee is he's very
really
dry, very dry.
Let's try two things here today. It does it quickly. Let's do this. I want you to lean into the Stuart Lee voice. All right. We really didn't hear it in that first response. Can you do better?
There you go. Long pauses, recursive logic, unbearable irony, and a slow burn dismantling of vague premises.
Okay, now read this.
Right, so we've got it's a sort of Schrodinger's homepage. On one hand, you don't update it; it remains what it is now, a museum piece, an online something reliquary.
Reliquary.
Yeah, a
It's where they-
GeoCities tombstone for your
You're
past
not
ambitions.
watching enough Cadville.
Yeah, this is nice. This
You
is
try for those, go.
And so on the other hand, you do update it, and then what? New opportunities, lovely, vague, soft, like a marshmallow of intent. And new opportunities, not sales leads, not contracts, not a client demo that doesn't crash in Safari, just possibility, potential, the dark matter of business risk. But let's stay with it. So yeah, the cause again, present tense, credible, bad. Yeah, it still gives me a C plus, which is good. At least it's consistent, but it has definitely given me more Stuart Lee. The impact again, not present, not even attempted, not even a whiff of revenue, user churn, or reputational decay. Just the unmeasured sorrow of unrealized potential. So I've got a structured in embryo, a cause and a directional effect, but it's undercooked. The effect is vague, and the impact is conspicuously absent. It's like trying to power a jet engine with vibes. I like that. So is this going to be publicly available? Is this a paid for thing? Adam, how are you getting this out?
So there's three scenarios. We'll figure out how to get it out. We're figuring it out, right? Has anyone figured out the whole AI business model and what we should do and all this? What this will do, and a bunch of my clients will be very happy about this. It reduces me yelling at them in meetings because their risks are so poorly structured as they're learning this. Now they get to do this in the quiet of their office, and Stuart Lee or John Cleese or John Stewart can yell at them instead of me. So there's client, there's paid access. Of course, you want to do something that's open to it. Now, remember, this is focused on cause effect impact. So you want to have read, you want to get why we do cause effect impact. I can give you a lecture on it, but it's about just honing it. The whole purpose of talking about risks is actionability. That's the only reason you would bother writing it down. Most risk lists are storage and CYA activities and things you put on your project review so that if and when you fail, you can say, see, we told management why we failed.
CYA being cover your ass.
Yes. I left to you whether that's something you want to say in your podcast.
Yeah, I can say ass. That's fine.
What is this, HBO? All right, great.
HBO, that's an American reference I don't get, unfortunately, Adam.
Nerd. Limited. We used to be important in the world.
It used to be, yeah. Then you made some bad decisions. No, you didn't, Adam.
Well, no, you look, I'm a believer you get the government you deserve.
Well, I mean, not that I can talk, I mean, the UK hasn't exactly showered itself in glory when it comes to its choice of leaders and parties over the last decade or so.
Right. Bloomberg in London once said, Brexit was the most unforced self-inflicted wound in modern history until America trumped it.
Ah, lovely. So true. So true. At least we're in the same shitty boat together. Anyway. I really like this tool. I do really like it. I think what I enjoy about it is that it cuts through a lot of the fluff. I think also often when it comes to any times we are trying to communicate anything, it's fluffy and it's vague. And whilst there is value in that, you don't want to be too specific. If you're just relaxing with your friends, perhaps if you're really trying to do something that isn't routine and there is an element of unknown within that, I think that specificity is very important. And I think it's a great kind of a tool that you you've built there, the way it can be so like specific about the fluffiness in what I said, because everything I said was absolutely true.
Well, or at least useful. Our standards tend to be useful in workability. You
Yeah.
know, it's in the context says, I don't know what your cost of being late is. I simply know you have one.
Mhm.
So once you tell me what you're trying to do, why it's important not to be late, then we have a context to actually get serious about why is it going to fail. I know one of one of the things I look for in mature, effective organizations is when they're doing reviews of activities, projects, initiatives, whatever it is, that when the manager says, thank you for telling me all the fun, you're all smart. Thank you. Now tell me what your biggest risks are. And that's where I want to spend the bulk of the time in this review.
Mhm.
And that's what you ought to be talking about.
So if people have listened to this and thinking, okay, Bob, how like do I even begin to know what a risk is? Like, do people ever kind of ask you that question where they did like they're just stuck? Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the definition of a risk, even the lay definition is useful, right? It's a reason, it's a worry that you have that you're not going to be able to deliver something that you're intending or committed to deliver. Now, the question is, what are my risks? I don't even know. And if you want to know where to start from there, just to ask the person next to you.
But
See, this is one of the things.
is a risk
Yeah.
realized or unrealized? So is this a worry about something that has
Oh,
happened
got it.
or will happen or
That's a great question for clarification. By definition, a risk must not have happened.
okay.
Now, something may have happened, right? So you may have a risk that I have 19th century electrical wiring in my house, and the effect is we may get an electrical fire, right? And the house will burn down. Well, if it's already on fire, then the cause is now the house is on fire.
Yeah.
The effect is, threat to life and liberty and death and all that. So you've got to see where you are. So it's a critical thing to recognize that any concern you have about the future is related to an assessment of something that has already happened
Mm-hmm.
and teasing out what it is about the universe. It could just be our vendor X delivered late last month, so I'm worried they're going to deliver late this month. Right?
Yeah.
That's a reasonable, not very specific cause and effect. And the
Yeah.
impact is milestone XYZ will not be met, and customer ABC will be upset with us.
So we break that down from a CEI perspective. The C is the event, the activating event, which has caused you to have this worry.
Which has already happened.
Yeah, it's already
Must
happened.
tense verbs.
Yeah. Then, when for the effect and the impact is what, and I'm going for clarification here so that the listeners
Good,
can kind
good.
of tune in. I'm
Well
lucky.
done.
I've got the book right here, But is
Well,
it
Amazon.
is it the effect or the impact that's the risk, or is it both, or is it neither?
So here it is. The effect is the thing that will, the description of what you're worried about will happen on the activity that you're engaged in. The impact is why, if that activity happens, it is material to the business.
So then which of those is the risk? Is it the combination of those two things that equals the risk, or is it
Combination of all three, we would say, right? So this is the thing we're breaking apart, or, so we're doing it. But it's the cause is the thing that has happened that has you concerned that the effect may happen. And if that happens, then here's why the CEO should be worried about it.
So if someone says to me, right, this is all amazing, Adam, but in our organization, we're still kind of moving forward and really understanding just what the hell all this is about. And I've only got one box with one line to type in what my risk is. Out of the CE and the I, and there's a character limit, I can't put the whole CEI in. What would your advice to them be? Is to say what is the risk? Is it the worry, or is it the impact? The effect or the impact?
Hey, your pity game, Ben, and do this. You must have at least the cause and the effect for actionability, because you want to know what you as an individual, you're not stuck with the burden of speaking the truth. It's, I think the fact that they keep serving haggis in the cafeteria will have the effect of low morale and people won't hit their milestones. Right. So just putting in, I'm worried about, we currently do haggis. Well, that already exists, right? You want to say, the leap of logic, and that's, I can get us into the complexity way of that, right? It's called objective thinking, as a distinct from inductive and deductive. So we'll do the doctoral seminar version of this podcast, another time. You got to hear someone's linkage to a possible future outcome. And their linkage may be very different from yours, but you want to get the diversity of this. And that is how you start getting things that are interesting. Rose and Excel are cheap. They'll make more, right? Just populate it. And then we get into a prioritization model that helps you, potentially the haggis risks shouldn't be at the top, right? And a quick thing, if I give people, all my agile folks out there, agile has a very weak conversation on risk, let alone in the structures. And a quick way to add it is take your product backlog, add a column for risk, and go and just evaluate everything on what we consider the most important priority, which is, have you done it before? Because what screws projects up is not the stuff the team was the most worried about. It was the stuff they had the least experience with, which is why Scrum gets more and more continuous and deterministic when you're dealing with code and stuff that is predictable. When you're doing novel stuff, those structures really do need to be supplemented because they're not optimized for that. And of course, when I'm dealing with a poor chemical company that's trying to rework the physics of plasma, there's a lot of stuff that they need that need to be deployed to operate in places of that level of risk.
So, and we are kind of getting near to our time, unfortunately, but because there was something that you said, which is, you don't want to get into the doctoral conversation about it, but I think that the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning is kind of part of the reason I think the agile world tied itself in knots and didn't really, as an industry, deliver much in the end. Because, and this is where I'm going to say this with confidence, knowing that I'm expecting a correction, Adam, because I may have got this wrong. I'm a bit rusty in all of this, but there seemed to be a huge degree of text written when agile was kind of at its kind of real peak by purely based on inductive reasoning. So lots and lots of, every book had made reference to Kodak or other companies, and they were saying, okay, we've seen all these patterns, so this must be true. And all they were doing was cherry picking stuff. They'd never actually taken the thing they'd then seen, got into a new situation, and actually tested their hypotheses on something new. Very few books actually did that. And I think the whole industry was then built upon people picking up these things, these patterns that they believe they saw between all these other companies and holding it up as a way to do something. But then what that missed was actually the opportunity to put it into practice and actually try it and learn something meaningful. And I think it ended up being very vague and unspecific, and for the people who thought they knew what they were talking about, but really didn't. And I've always, and it always really bugged me when I was reading certain books. There's one book, I always have heated conversations with people because they're like, "Oh, do you like this book?" I'm like, "I think it's terrible." Because there was a book, and I need to go reread it, so I'll caveat this with maybe my knowledge is a little bit rusty again. But The Culture Code was a book written about someone's inductive reasoning as to what should work, without actually having one story about when the Culture Code was actually applied. The only example it did come up with, which was close to it being applied, had a caveat, a footnote at the end, saying what a catastrophic failure the whole thing had been. And so for me, it really bugged me that all these, agile kind of let itself down. It was very quiet on risk. It was very quiet on actually, in some kind of rigorous way, putting into practice the stuff that really made a difference. Now correct me.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm with you on this. This is the problem with anything that's simply trying to fix something in the past is always going to be suboptimal than having some vision of complex thing of what it should look like. If you're just trying to fix Kodak, then you'll fix Kodak, but you'll miss what really is the objective functionality. And so a lot of it was reactive, and people had spent a bunch of their careers and they were reacting to, we got to get out of this, the famous the famous Agile Manifesto. We will not just document for the sake of it. We know it. dot working code and all that. And that's wonderful. And if you take it at its purest, it is a platonic form that you want to aspire to. Like, we need code that actually will be documented. We need the ability to test working code and debug it in real time in fast cycles, right? And of course, one of the things is like, if you are doing those things, agile tends to work. But a lot of folks, well, at least we're not documented. We know we got it all, at least then you get the worst of both worlds. If I want to know the health of a software company, I want to see what's their DevOps, what's their QA. Are they doing I'd rather see. I don't care about the sprint planning as much as I want to see the product review at the end of the sprints. Are you able to know? This gets back to transparency. What is so? Not what you think it is. And that is one of the core cultural things. So people without drama attached need to be able to be very clear about what got done and what didn't get done. And human beings can get very squirmy on that. And so you want to set that as a cultural norm very early. And that becomes part of the emergent behavior. The foundation that leads to better.
Yeah. I had a gentleman on the podcast. I cannot remember his name because I hit 44 and apparently my memory stopped working, but he was really interesting. And we were talking about meetings, and he made and facilitation. He made a really good point, which is you can begin to change the culture of a company if you start to change the way that certain key meetings happen. Like if you can change something in those meetings and where people even they're effective, and you have the hard conversations you've been avoiding, then actually cultural change can begin with that. And I thought that is such a lovely, to coin a popular phrase like hack for actually beginning to shift a culture. And all this shit's been written about cultures and how to change them, etc. But actually, what people need to do is actually show up differently in those moments and do something different. There's little minor acts of transgression from the cultural norms that can really begin to make a difference.
Are you throwing me a softball from the book, or is this just emerged? Because let's tell us about one of our core things. So when we teach the workshop, I'm going to give this away, right? 4 principles, right? These are great things. You've seen them on posters and all that. And I think in the book, we have like a cat hanging from a tree for integrity or something like that. And that's how we relate to this. We're all about, our work is how do you operationalize this? So I'm teaching a 2-day workshop. We introduce usually before lunch break on day 1. And I'll ask, all right, let's take lunch. How about 45 minutes? All right. So I request everyone in their seats ready to go at 1:15. Okay. Does anyone decline my request? And we go away. Now, what typically happens when people come back from lunch on the work? What does it look like at 1:15? How many people? Let's say there's 20 people in the class. Who's back?
Class? Like maybe not everyone?
Maybe like 10, 15, whatever it is. And so when it's 1:16, I'll go up to the board and I write, let's say there's 20 people in the class. I'll write 16/20. Some people notice. Really, 2 of the people are just outside the door having coffee and right there over and whatever. And of course, I ask what this is, and people look at it and they say, someone gets it. It's like, it's the people who are back. Actually, what it is, the denominator is the people who committed to be back at 1:15. The numerator is of those people who was back. 16 over 15 is 80%. That's our integrity score. And then everyone starts turning weird colors and stuff. And like, well, I was just out there. Right. What did that was the request? In seats, ready to go. All right. And all of a sudden, the light bulbs go off, chairs start getting thrown. And that is exactly your point. If we want integrity, if we want to hit milestones, we got to get serious about this at the beginning on the small stuff before. We don't want to get serious about our integrity the week before the big milestone. And what happens is, of course, just basic Deming, right? What you measure begins to go in. So the big thing is we're not beating folks up. It's like, you said you'd be back at 1:15, right? And I've heard it all on, defensing, or you didn't exactly say commit. That's all good. And it's fascinating to see how the team then becomes complexity theory, self-organizing toward that attractor. And they say, I told him, well, please don't be the first workshop team ever to, never to hit 100%. And then they start doing it, and then they start self-managing, and then you have a new team.
Mm-hmm. It's
That simple. I didn't say it's easy, but it is that simple.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes like, something. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that. But I love that integrity idea. And it wasn't a softball at all. It was actually the conversation I had with a guy called Evan Unger. We did an episode called "Life's Too Short for Bad Meetings," and yeah, but it's true. It's true. But I think that, and then we will wrap up in a second. But I remember very early on in my career, I came across this concept of how people get ruthlessness mixed up with rigor. And I think that a lot of the things we've been talking about, I mean, you made a note down here, graded conversations around commitment. I think kind of the integrity score, getting people to turn up, like all these things. Some people, I was believed over time, these are really ruthless. Oh, you're being so mean, you're being so tough. It's like, but no, like I think you get to a certain realization point, like an inflection point, where you realize actually we're without rigor, without understanding what performance means, without knowing how it's supposed to show up, if we can harness everyone doing that, we'll have a successful business. And that's what we're here to do, is surely to have a successful business. And actually these little things make a huge difference. I think people maybe feel uncomfortable because they feel they're a little bit mean rather than just being like a little bit rigorous.
This is what, we believe in a small set of simple rules applied with rigor, and it's a change exercise. And you want to be okay wherever the team starts, but because it's a very simple set, they begin to play, and it begins to change, and then it just becomes how they operate. And that's how we do it. It doesn't begin with the big glorious change email that comes down, like management so wishes those were.
But it's so glorious.
Engineer your way to get there. This is where I'm a radical in academia, because everyone's sort of like, we've got to wait for psychological safety, right? We make it comfy and whatever, and I'm all for comfy. I'm mushy teddy bear, right? But you can engineer it. When teams go around and they get what's your cause effect at top risks, first 2 times they do it, it's deers in the headlights. And then by the 3rd time, it's just how we operate. And because everyone's doing it, becomes a standard for membership. And I was in a very large company that was doing 2 things. There was a group that had me working with them to do risk up front. And then there was the global agile initiative. Yeah. And, we had a very quick conversation about how they're compatible. And, the agile and I folks were on the same page. Then we went about our business. And months later, the head of the thing came back. We love getting teams. The agile head was like, we love getting teams that have been through risk up front, because agile depends on self-managing teams that can trust each other. Mm-hmm. And when they throw risk up front, and they've already spent their time talking about all the reasons why they think this project is stupid and won't work, they get into trust mode like that. And it's, it really is. I mean, this stuff, we've decided, we've been doing this for a while, and the book keeps getting smaller and smaller in that it's this foundation stuff. Just get this in place, and that's for how you can take over the universe. Don't put this in place, and then you wind up with a lot of icing over mud. Does not make a cake.
Sadly. Adam, thank you so much. I enjoyed that.
My pleasure.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.
If people want to find out more information about you or get in touch for any reason, where can they do that?
Yes. Well, the easiest thing, you can just type in riskupfront.com. We'll get you to our website. I'm at adam@riskupfront.com. And the best thing is to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's always fun. And Adam Josephs on LinkedIn. And I'm sure you'll insert all these links and stuff. The consulting website is celerityconsulting.com, but that takes longer to type. All right. And Risk Upfront is on Amazon and all these exotic places. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
you can watch it that way. And there's an audiobook.
Oh, nice. Love an audio. I'm going to love audiobooks again. So we'll make sure there's adequate linkage in the show notes so people do make sure you check those out. And Adam, it's been lovely to meet you. I'd love to meet you in person one day.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I might be in Chicago next month, but that's a little way away from where you are.
Yeah. Well, you never know. And very
Okay.
interesting things going on in Chicago or swing by New York.
I could do that. Well, let's see. Let's see how long.
All
Let's
right.
see.
Do it.
Yeah. But thank you everyone for listening. It's been a while
Such
since
a
I've
pleasure.
done. Yeah, it's been great to have you here. It's been great to be here. It's been great to do an interview again after a bit of time off. I'm not going to be doing that many interviews. For those of you that are regular listeners, again, and I've been apologizing a lot, but I just haven't been able to keep up the weekly episodes with the increased client demand that I'm experiencing at the moment. So I am doing my best to to keep up with getting episodes out weekly, but do forgive me when it's there's a week or two's gap. I'm just kind of battling to try and keep up with them. But what you will see is a couple more interviews coming out, but only high caliber guests. And we'd also be seeing more episodes. You'll also be seeing a Substack from me at some point over the next few months. So yeah, do keep an eye out for that. Everyone, go and make friends with Adam on LinkedIn. Ask him a challenging question about something. I'm sure you can become great friends. And that's it. Have a great rest of whatever it is, morning, afternoon, or evening. And we look forward to welcoming you back onto the Productivity Podcast again, hopefully next week. Thank you very much.